everyone, and welcome to Lake Erie College Fine Arts Focus. From the campus, I'm your host, Professor Paul Gothard, Director of Fine Arts. Stay with me for the next quarter hour as we take an in-depth look at the activities and productions, personalities, and programs of the fine arts at Lake Erie College. With his third of 4 installments on the songs of Hugo Wolf, here's my colleague, Dr. Andrew White.
Thank you, Professor Gothard. Welcome to this third program in a series commemorating the centenary of the death of the great master of the German Lied, Hugo Wolf, in which we compare the way Wolf sets a text with the approach to the same text taken by a famous predecessor. Today we will be comparing a Wolf song with one by Robert Franz. Franz was a German composer, roughly contemporaneous with Schumann, his period of activity being mainly the 1840s through the 60s. Wolf, of course, was primarily active in the 1880s and 90s. Franz, like Wolf, was almost exclusively a song composer, and he was highly regarded in his day. None other than Schumann himself saw to the publication of Franz's first book of Lieder, and the highly influential Franz Liszt provided a lengthy, positive review of Franz's songs for Schumann's periodical The Neue Zeitschrift für Musik. Perhaps it reflects the influence of the North German Lieder tradition, but Franz's songs tend to be rather conservative in style. Wolf, on the other hand, was Austrian, and therefore probably felt less bound by the strictures of the North. Franz strove to achieve a folk-like simplicity, attempting nothing more than the deepening of a poetic substratum, as he put it. His songs are frequently strophic, the same music for each strophe of the poem, conservative in range, and they almost always feature the melody line doubled in the piano part. This makes his songs excellent teaching material for beginning-level voice students, and over the years his songs have tended to be relegated to that purpose. Nevertheless, Franz's Lieder are charming and graceful, and they evoke an ambiance of intimacy. The poem we will be working with today is by Wolf's favorite poet, Edvard Mörike. 56 of Wolf's 334 Lieder are on texts by this German romantic, whose lyric poetry is often in a folk-like style similar to that of Goethe, Uhland, and others, but with a specifically Swabian or southwest German flavor. Mörike, like Wolf, was not entirely stable psychologically, and the following poem, entitled Verborgenheit, or Concealment, seems to express the despair of one who suffers from radical mood swings. Leave, O world, O leave me be, tempt me not with love's gifts, leave this heart alone to have its elation, its pain. What I grieve I do not know, it is an unknown sorrow. Always through tears I see the sun's dear light. Often, when I'm hardly aware of myself, and the pure joy breaks through the heaviness, likewise I am thrust, elation fills my breast. Leave, O world, O leave me be, tempt me not with love's gifts, leave this heart alone to have its elation, its pain. Notice how Mörike repeats the opening strophe at the end, creating sort of an ABCA form. It is as if the process of describing his turmoil in strophes 2 and 3 serves only to reaffirm his original premise, that he is too confused right now to handle contact with the outside world, particularly with anyone to whom he might find himself endeared. I say it is an ABCA form, sort of, because there are 4 strophes, the last of which is an exact repetition of the first, but technically it is not really an ABCA form, since the same meter and rhyme scheme are maintained throughout. A composer would be perfectly justified in writing a strophic setting based on the structural uniformity of the 4 strophes, but the content of those strophes suggests something else. Furthermore, let us observe how the large-scale form is reflected on the smaller scale. Listen to the rhyme scheme. Lass, o Welt, o lass mich sein, Locket nicht mit Liebesgaben, lass dies Herz alleine haben, seine Wonne, seine Pein. Was ich traure, weiß ich nicht, es ist unbekanntes Wehe, immer dadurch Tränen sehe, ich der Sonne Liebeslicht. Oft bin ich mir kaum bewusst, und die helle Freude zücket, durch die Schwere so mich drücket, wonniglich in meiner Brust. Lass, o Welt, o lass mich sein, locket nicht mit Liebesgaben, lass dies Herz alleine haben, seine Wonne, seine Pein. Within each strophe, the first line rhymes with the last, sandwiching something else in the middle, just as on the large scale the first strophe repeats at the end, sandwiching other material in the middle. Notice how these structures characterize the title of the poem, the idea of concealment, of hiding something on the inside. The rhyme scheme, however, is A-B-B-A, whereas the content scheme, if I may call it that, is A-B-C-A. Now let us hear how Robert Franz sets the poem. As with all the performances on this series, my collaborator at the piano is Dominic Intili.
Lass mich sein, locke nicht mit Liebesgaben, lass dies Herz alleine haben, seine Wonne, seine Pein. Was ich traure, weiß ich nicht, es ist unbekanntes Wege, immer dadurch Tränen sehe, ich der Sonne Liebeslied. Oft bin ich mir kaum bewusst, und die helle Freude züget, durch die Schwere so mich trägt, wonniglich in lass mich sein, locke nicht mit Liebesgaben, lass dies Herz alleine haben, seine Wonne, seine Pein. Seine Wonne,
Franz, who, as it has been noted, favored the strophic form, here chooses a varied A-B-B-A form with a pronounced drawing out of the end of the second B at the words wonniglich in meiner Brust, elation in my breast, thereby varying the second B section somewhat. Franz creates a feeling of turbulence with phrasing that obscures the bar lines and negates the meter, and with periods that modulate, arriving at a different key at every cadence. Nevertheless, the periodic quality of the phrase structure, by periodic I mean antecedent consequent or question and answer quality, is maintained throughout. The overall effect is one of contented melancholy, sort of like the Rodgers and Hart song, Glad to be Unhappy. Now let's turn to the Wolf song. Wolf's Verborgenheit is one of his most famous songs. As you will hear, Wolf uses an A-B-C-A form, more reflective of the content than the structure of the poem. Notice the surging dynamics, louds and softs, in the B and C sections. Also, the extreme use of range, highs and lows, in both the vocal line and the piano part. Notice how this impetuosity in the B and C sections contrasts with the comparatively placid A sections. Wolf was impetuous by nature, and his illness exacerbated this aspect of his personality to the point where, towards the end of his life, he had to be institutionalized. His compositions tended to come in fits and spurts. Most of the Mörike Lieder were written in a white heat. "My cheeks are glowing with excitement like molten iron," he confessed to a friend, "and this state of inspiration," he continued, "is more a delicious torment to me than an unalloyed pleasure." In the B and C sections of Verborgenheit, Wolf's first-hand experience with manic depression reveals itself in paroxysms that ring true both for himself and for the tormented and repressed poet. This turbulent interior is flanked on either side by an A section in which a perfectly balanced period is expressed within a modest range, soft, dynamic, and moderate steady tempo. Only in the use of chromaticism, movement by half-steps, is the sense of inner turmoil intimated in these otherwise calm and collected exterior sections. Join us next week for our final program on this theme, in which we will be comparing songs of Wolf with those on the same texts by Robert Schumann.
Thank you for joining me this week. Tune in next time for another look into the fine arts at Lake Erie College. This is your host, Professor Paul Gothard. I'll see you then.